So, Professor Dalgleish, we need to axe lateral flows, don't we, if we have any hope of getting back to normal? And by axing them, I say surely only people with symptoms should actually be testing themselves.
Well, this is exactly what I've been arguing for a long time. What is the point of testing people who are then positive and they have to self-isolate with an agent that is just so infectious? And what's convinced me that it is completely pointless trying to have a get rid of COVID per se and let it just a zero COVID policy, and the futility of what we're seeing in Australia at the moment, is that what is the point when people who've been vaccinated, they take all the precautions, they go to various events, and they're all coming out infected 2 to 5 days later with the Omicron. Now, from my point of view, that is wonderful news, because the Omicron is infecting them. Often they don't know, but they've taken a test because somebody else felt a little odd, and so they're positive. So the whole lot of them, half of my staff were isolated last week because of this very scenario. None of them are ill. So why on earth are we basically committing sort of business suicide? And the effect this is having on small business, and particularly the NHS, is really a national disaster and costing us an absolute fortune. And I just reiterate, I think the fact you have an infection that's so infectious that everybody seems to be getting is wonderful news, because this could be the final proper vaccination, much better than keep jabbing with different ones, third, fourth, etc. This is going to give us a broad range of vaccination, and I think that's going to be the be-all and end-all and the beginning of the end, and we should actually adapt accordingly.
Dr. David Strain, I mean, all of that from Professor Dalgleish makes me feel happy and positive. Why do you say that we should keep on testing?
So I have to say, I agree with a lot of what Professor Dalgleish has just said. I mean, the Omicron variant is actually the thing that's going to protect us from this new IHU variant in France, which is a lot more deadly, but a lot less transmissible. And therefore, having the Omicron variant is going to be beneficial in that case. But we are still seeing a lot of people, particularly the unvaccinated and those immunocompromised for many other conditions, are in hospital at the moment. I've spent most of today planning to open additional wards to care for these patients. And we do need to be thinking about our engagement with these highly vulnerable people. Unless we have some idea of our status, it effectively means we are putting these vulnerable people, putting elderly people into their own personal lockdown. And therefore we are, by definition, discriminating against some of the most vulnerable in society if we are getting into a position where we are mixing with them without knowing what risk we pose
But David,
to them.
throughout human history, David, sorry, can I just interrupt and get you to address something specifically? You would accept that throughout human history, the extremely medical vulnerable have always been asked to protect themselves in a way that ordinary citizens don't. Because the normal run-of-the-mill flu could kill someone who is very unwell. I think the point that folk like Professor Dalgleish and myself are making is that we cannot continue to effectively shut down society.
Everything that we're seeing about the Omicron variant is pretty much most of the population will have had it within 6 weeks or so. Like Professor Dalgleish, I am really keen that Omicron does spell the end. We are really hopeful that there's not going to be any further mutations. We're hopeful that we're not going to end up in this position where the next variant actually comes back more like Delta rather than more like the common cold. We all hope that's going to be the case. But for the next 6 weeks or so, we have these vulnerable patients that all previously were part of society. I mean, we've been looking after people who are teachers, who are working in a bank, working in many other agencies, who are going about normal life. And whilst this is around and people are potentially spreading it to them, you've actually taken all of them out of circulation as well. If you look at healthcare staff, if I am in hospital and I give COVID to anybody who's in hospital for any other reason, COVID will make their condition worse.